I'm Emily Miller. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, we got some news last night in what is called here in DC a Friday night news dump. That's when politicians give out news that they don't want the public to hear. And the announcement came from Nancy Pelosi. She has now extended the, quote, public emergency for COVID in the House so that members of the House of Representatives don't actually have to come to Washington, D.C. and vote until 2 days after the midterm election. So I got her press release at, I think, 3 o'clock last night. Of course, I immediately opened it up and saw that she had written out her reasoning. And it said, in light of the attached notification from the Sergeant at Arms, in consultation with the Office of the Attending Physician, that sounds very medical, that a public health emergency is in effect due to the novel coronavirus. Novel. I am hereby extending the covered period designated on January 4th, 2021, pursuant to Section C, blah, 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 to November 10th. Election day is November 8th. Right. I'm sure it's all about COVID and social distancing, Speaker Pelosi. I also pointed out, and I'm sure those of you who already read this on my Substack, which is emilypostnews.com, I pointed out that the President of the United States, Joe Biden, just said last Sunday on 60 Minutes that the pandemic is over. Now, of course, the CDC and the White House are going to try to backpedal this because they need the pandemic to keep going forever. They want us on masks forever. But we all know the pandemic is over. There is nothing in Nancy Pelosi's email that says any medical reason or scientific reason that members of the House of Representatives who are elected by us, by the people, to do one thing and go vote for us in Washington, why they can't come in. So this proxy voting is what they call it. They've been doing it since March 2020, since the lockdown, continually. And it's mostly Democrats. And I have some stats, which you can see at emilypostnews.com, showing from the Ripon Society, showing how 90% of Democrats have used proxy voting versus about 67% of Republicans. So this heavily weighs Democrat. And then I also pulled up, when she said the attached document from the Sergeant of Arms, she pulled up, I read through that, and it's the same exact nonsense, nothing medical, nothing scientific, just they're going to extend it. Well, she did say it's extended from January 2021. That's just, they have to keep continuing it. They keep adding to it. And it was supposed to expire on September 26th in a couple of days. And now she, at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, when none of the representatives are even in town to ask questions from reporters about this, she skips town and extends this until November 8th. I mean, these people have one job to do, is to show up and go to work and go into, and I've worked in the House of Representatives. They have a card, they go into the floor of the House when the bell goes off, and then there's a vote. They stick their card in and they decide A or nay. That's it. That's their job. Of course, they have to prepare. Their staff will prepare them, tell them how to vote on each thing. If it's something minor that they don't know about, the whip of each, either the majority or the minority, will tell them how to vote if it's a big important bill for their party. But they actually have to put the card in and push the button themselves. But we won't be seeing them do that. Many of them do that until 2 days before the election. What do you think they'll be doing until then? It doesn't say. I did see that Congressman Thomas Massey of Kentucky, a Republican, he immediately tweeted about this when he got the letter because it's sent out as a message to the House, to the members before it was sent to the press. And he said, the big guy, referring to Biden, said, come on, man, pandemic is over. He didn't really say that. He said the pandemic is over. We get the joke. Fully vaxxed can now get fifth shot. Nevertheless, Pelosi extends proxy voting due to novel coronavirus, Massey actually put that in quotes, until the week of the election. And I will say Pelosi's dictate, which came out as a dear colleague, that's what I was referencing earlier. That's when members write to each other letters. They call them dear colleagues. And so it came out as a dear colleague. I've read it to you. This public health emergency with the Sergeant of Arms approved it, and the physician's office approved it, so it's completely official. Now, I will say to a friend of mine, Susan Crabtree, who I used to work with, the Washington Times, tweeted, and I thought it was so clever. She said, notice this happened the same day that the Republican minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, placed an op-ed in, I think it's the New York Post, saying we need to stop proxy voting, and if Republicans take control, we're going to stop proxy voting, because people need credibility for their members of Congress that they're not on vacation, which they've been caught doing in proxy voting. Susan said, same day McCarthy wrote an op-ed saying he will end Pelosi's proxy voting, abuse of power that allowed 90% of House Democrats to get paid without needing to show up for work. Now, McCarthy actually said, this is what he wrote, and I wanted to highlight this because it's part of the Republicans' big strategy that they unveiled yesterday, and the pillars that they are going to do and what they're going to follow if they take back the House in November. He wrote that eliminating proxy voting will restore voters' confidence in Congress. Possibly a little. I don't know if it'll restore from where they are now, but it's up a little. Starting with ending Nancy Pelosi's proxy voting abuse of power that allowed 90% of House Democrats to get paid without needing to show up for work. And that is the line they keep using. So I picked it up. It came from the Ripon Society. Now, this is stats from 2021. We don't have the stats from 2022 yet. Somebody does. Somebody's tracking who's voting in real life and who's voting by proxy. But Ripon Society counted them, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of votes. So sorry, I'm not going to do it for 2022. And as you can see, one day when I learn how to edit so you can see these things, I will show it to you the other way. But as you can see, this is the Democrats. The dark blue is the ones that are voting by proxy. And this is the Republicans. How many of them have voted by proxy? It's a pretty big contrast. Now, of course, in 2021, I could say that there was actually a pandemic, and people did need to social distance. People were still getting COVID. That was actually like serious cases. Now, houses, the only thing that, I'll go into that in a sec. One thing I actually will say as a sidebar, I wrote this story in the Epoch Times recently, and I apologize for those of you who are subscribers to Emily Post who can't get past the paywall Epoch Times. If you put an email in, you generally can read my stories. They're not going to charge you. So I did a story recently because I was at the Capitol, and I noticed that the House gallery and the Senate gallery were closed. And the House and the Senate gallery are the areas that if you're on the House floor and you're watching from C-SPAN cameras are in the gallery. So it's the top viewing set. So it's where the public sits, where the press sits. When you get a tour of the Capitol, you can watch the proceedings. It's very important for democracy. They closed the gallery during the lockdown in 2020, and they have not reopened it. So visitors, the reason it caught my eye is because all these tourists are walking around the Rotunda, Statuary Hall, and none of them could actually see the House or Senate. And so I did a story on this. I'm the only one who has, and apparently I'm maybe the only one who cares, but I really do believe that the public should be watching these proceedings go on. It shouldn't be closed. So I called the Sergeant of Arms, who I referenced in Nancy Pelosi's story, and they said it's not our fault, it's nothing to do with us. So I called the architect of the Capitol, and they said, that's not our problem, we have nothing to do with this. So everybody finally directed me to the U.S. Capitol Police, and I spoke to them, and they said, oh yes, we are short-staffed. That's the reason, not for COVID, although it closed for COVID. Capitol Police said they were short-staffed. I do find it strange that they're so short-staffed that they can't open the galleries, but they said they were opening them September. And I'm monitoring this because somebody has to. This is what reporters do, is we hold these people accountable. So I'm monitoring this. At some point, they have to reopen those galleries for people. COVID is not flying around. Maybe they're worried about a riot. I don't know. They won't say. But there are certain things that need to be reopened for democracy to reopen, and proxy voting is one of them. And I'll say, I put this in for my paid subscribers, what my personal opinion is, or my analysis is of the situation, of why they're doing this. But I will say, quite frankly, you can guess why Nancy Pelosi wants her members of Congress home, not voting, in the days leading up to this election. Okay, well, that's my story for today. I want to just I like to give my tech updates. Ed Powell, an old friend of mine, suggested that I use a lavalier mic because he said the audio, I have a Yeti mic, and it says picking up too much audio. And I said, well, I haven't been using a lavalier mic, which I own, because it reminds me too much of television, and I think YouTube is just more casual. But let me know in the comments if you can hear me better using this, and if it does, I will start using it again. And let me know anything, how the light's going. As I said, I'm trying to learn editing. I have made so many videos in the past 2 weeks that I really want to edit, but I get in there and I just get so overwhelmed by it. So I'm trying. I'm at 2 weeks on YouTube today, and I have over 1,000 subscribers, which is more than, I think I started at 500 or 600. So all of you who are doing that, subscribing to my channel, hitting that button, getting notified, watching my reports, and leaving really helpful comments and supportive comments, it means so much to me. I really appreciate this. It's a completely new platform for me, and I'm just getting started. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your weekend.